This is part 1 of 2 episodes.
G'day folks! Welcome to the Binaural Cafe, where we explore an amazing variety of sounds captured in the wildest places and spaces. And we do it all in immersive sound for earphones. The special on the board today is, how to boil a microphone.
What is that?
It's a
Microphone? Well,
microphone.
what does it mean? What does it mean to boil? What does it mean to boil a microphone?
Boil a microphone. We think we know what a microphone. We hope we know what a microphone is, or we shouldn't have this podcast. And this podcast series is debuting with this episode. This is the first ever episode of the Binaural Cafe. Welcome to the Binaural Cafe podcast. And first of all, I think if you're wondering what binaural is, well, you're gonna have to stick around for a minute, because first, let's introduce the other folks at the table. And on my right, I've got a long-time colleague and companion cohort in live performance, Paul Gatien. Paul, you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. I've been working with Matthew for 40 years,
Wow.
maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. 35, 36 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that. It's been a long time. Live sound engineer.
Yeah, well, not only for myself, but you're also doing sound at the Gardens, at the Bouchard Gardens.
I do work at Butchart Gardens.
Which
that's right.
recently won, what award was that again?
That was the Reader's Choice, Times Columnist Reader's Choice Award for Best Outdoor Music Venue
Congratulations.
in 2022.
Since you're the guy at the helm there, you're the guy at the front of house console. That's impressive.
It was good.
Yeah, well, that's a big feather in your hat there. Congrats.
Yeah.
And Todd Hooge. You want to give a little introduction about yourself there, Todd?
Absolutely, yeah. I own and operate a local recording studio here in Victoria, British Columbia, actually Mechosen, which is just outside of Victoria.
Beautiful.
Called Sonic. Thank you. Called Sonic Forest Studios.
It is.
And it's a fully immersive audio recording facility. So doing recordings in Atmos and trying not to do anything in stereo whatsoever. But of course, binaural is not.
Well, yeah, is the exception, because
Right.
binaural audio, which we'll introduce in a second,
Right.
is actually a form of stereo.
Right.
And your studio, I think, is the only certified studio on the west coast of Canada for Dolby Atmos. Is that right?
Correct. Well, on Vancouver Island.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and Vancouver Island, and I think there are 8 now in Canada, and
you're one of them.
and I'm one of them. Yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's really interesting to see where this whole immersive thing is going. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, we assume you're keen on immersive sound. And anyway, but I'll introduce myself first, and then we'll get on with the subject matter. So myself is Matthew Lien, and I am a producer, recording artist, performer, songwriter, kind of all-around music guy. And I've been developing this format which combines binaural sound, which is in its native format, in its original format. It's been around for decades, and it's basically using a microphone that looks like a human head, and that's what we're using today. And where the eardrums would be in this human head-shaped microphone is a pair of microphones. And so it's a kind of, I like to refer to it as a periscope for your ears. Where we record and the spaces we record in is kind of directly transmitted to you with earphones, and it puts you aurally or sonically into that environment. And so myself as an artist, I've got about 23 albums out, award-winning, multi-platinum. I was the first foreigner to win the Grammy equivalent in Southeast Asia, their music awards, and Emmy equivalent, and I'm the appointed cultural ambassador to the government of Taiwan. Done a lot of stuff in Southeast Asia where my music took off. Kind of a long story there, but that's not the subject of this podcast series. This is all about my explorations in sound. So what we want to do is share with you guys, as well as the listeners here, some of the sounds that I've recorded, and every episode will have a topic. So how to boil a microphone, you'll understand what we're talking about when we get to the end of this. But it does all involve water, and more specifically oceans. Now, oceans are something that I've really enjoyed recording. When you go into nature, and I spend a lot of time in the natural world, some of the places I go just don't have a lot of other sounds, but there's a lot of river and stream. And oceans I find fascinating. They're not as easy to record as you'd think. If you go to an ocean with a lot of waves going on, it's kind of like going into a bus station or a really crowded restaurant, and you can't understand what anybody's saying because it's just a cacophony of conversation. Like I actually approach recording water, as looking for the conversations that I feel are interesting and appealing. So the first thing you look for is an ocean where the waves are coming in one at a time, not 10 at a time where there's lots of breakers happening. It's just like white noise is what we would call that. If you can find where one wave breaks and then crescendos and comes toward you and recedes, there's a whole performance in that. Mm-hmm. And so I'll stand there and I'll record an ocean for an hour and then go through it and look for like the 10 greatest hits, so to speak, the 10 best waves, and that'll be what goes on the album. Because in sound recording, I find you have to be hyper realistic because there's no visual to go with it.
Right.
So to start this off, I want to share with you what I think is a really beautiful ocean recording, but this is not binaural. And the reason is I wanted to demonstrate to you guys the difference between a binaural sound and a non-binaural sound.
Right.
So this is a non-binaural ocean. And I love this recording for it's soft and it's phasing across all those spectrums of frequencies. If you get a good thump, there's a lot of bottom end in there, and then it washes all the way to the foam. And I mean, the foam is literally at the highest of our spectrum of hearing.
Right.
So this recording was made in mid-side recording. It's a type of stereo recording. And when I record that, I expect it's going to be listened to on speakers. And so I go really wide on what we call the mid-side imaging. And the result of that is a real phasey sound. And sometimes if it gets extremely phasey, you almost don't like it. Like when you're listening on headphones, it kind of feels funny in your head.
Right.
But on speaker playback, which is where we've been with music production for the last several decades, it sounds fantastic.
Where was that recorded?
That was an ocean I recorded off the coast of Taiwan.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do now is play for you the same ocean in roughly the same location. This location was maybe a little bit better because the waves are crashing and coming right to your feet. And this is recorded in binaural sound, so you can get the difference. So if you close your eyes, you can hear that water coming right to your feet, like it's just underneath the table. So, for those of you that aren't at the table with us, like Todd's looking at me and just going, ooh, because it is this beautiful. It really
Well,
is.
there's so much more detail and movement.
Yeah.
It's true. In binaural, there's a lot more detail. You can really. I think it's because the space is just opened up back to reality, and so you're not trying to squeeze everything into the container of just stereo left right.
Yeah.
The first thing I notice when it starts playing is it starts with those far away waves, and the fact that I can discern them as far away as being far away is a hallmark of binaural sound. It's that spatial realism.
Right.
It's so much more immersive than the stereo version that you played earlier.
Yeah, it
so
is.
much more.
And there's one thing about recording waves. I mentioned first of all you want one wave at a time like that. And but the other thing you're looking for is conversation. You're looking for a performance within that wave. So I'm looking for a place where I'm going to get that nice, good crash, not too far away, so that it'll be well recorded, and then coming right to my feet, and then that receding, pulling back through the sand, and in this case, small pebbles, which gives you that. It's like breathing. It's like breathing in and out.
Yeah.
The other thing that I love with when recording oceans is looking for places where you could get that thump splash, along a cliff or some kind of rock formation that allows the waves to funnel into a tight spot. Get that thump where it runs out of space, and then it goes up into the air and comes down around you. So again, I want to play for you that kind of sound, but this is not binaural. And before I was working in binaural, this was great. It was as good as it could get. So check it out. It's real nice. You can hear how the waves are thumping and spraying. Now here's that same effect, but again in binaural. You almost feel like you're getting wet.
You do. It's so much different than the previous recording. The previous stereo recording sounds like it's on top of your ears, and this version, binaural version, sounds like you're in the environment. That's the big difference, right?
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. With music as well, when we record music in binaural, non-binaural music sounds like it's kind of on your ears or kind of in your head and against your head. And in binaural, it sounds like your head is in the music, entering the sphere of sound. And I do think that's true of binaural sound and music as well, is that it's more organic. It's kind of you, Paul, working in live sound, you're always hearing sound in the air around you.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate to work in an outdoor venue where you don't have all those reflections and everything to add weirdness to what we're hearing. So.
That's true. Yeah. It's truly out and all around you. So there's this is a place called Tofu Jie, which in Mandarin means tofu cliffs. And they call it that because the rocks are all broken up and falling around, like as if kind of medium firm tofu had broken apart. So they actually called it that. And it's great for sound, But there's another place in Taiwan that's a famous tourism destination. The locals love to go there. You'll often see it depicted in their promotional material. And it's called Lao Mei. And there are these fingers of rocks. It's a sandy beach, but there are these fingers of rocks that are exposed and not very high beyond the sandy beach, maybe a foot or two above the sand, and they get overgrown with this green, really brilliant green moss, and so it's strikingly beautiful. But because there are these fingers, you can imagine, look at your hands and put them down on the table, and the water comes up between those fingers and then gets to the end of the finger there, and where your knuckle is, and pops right up and down all around you. And that turned out to be a really great recording spot. So this is that sound effect. Like right away you can hear that punch, that low thump.
Yeah, and that's the water coming up to the inside of the knuckle and popping?
Right.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Almost sounds like fireworks in a way. Off in the distance.
Well, that's, the boom and then the crackle. That's a good analogy. Yeah. When I'm out there doing this, So the microphone that looks like a human head, almost like an Easter Island looking head, is expensive, and you don't want to get all that spray on you. So I've always got this umbrella with the mic. The microphone's name in the industry is called Fritz, because apparently the developer's name was Fritz at Neumann, and so we always refer to this mic as Fritz. And we don't want Fritz to get soaking wet.
Did they model the head shape after the inventor of the? Probably not.
I hope not. Fritz is rather stern looking.
Yes.
Yeah, but he doesn't. He doesn't have a mouth. There's nothing that even suggests a mouth. It's just an average depiction of the human head,
right,
so that most people can experience this, because everybody's head shape affects the physics of how sound waves get to your eardrums.
Right.
So Fritz has got an approximation of the average, but depending on your mood, sometimes if I'm feeling good and happy, I'll look at Fritz and Fritz is smiling. Other times, no, Fritz ain't pleased. So this next recording is something really unique, and I want to set this up a little bit because Taiwan, most of these recordings we're hearing now are in Taiwan, because that's where the boiling of the microphone occurred. We're on our way there. We're getting there, and Taiwan is in an area that where it suffers some pretty serious typhoons. Now, when typhoons are coming, the wind that's at work there is stirring up the ocean like crazy. So what's really impressive and actually sort of unsettling is when you go down to the shore and there's a typhoon at hand, and the effects are in full force. What you see happening, like the waves that you see crashing and smashing in, they're big and gnarly, and there's lots of gravel and sand in every wave. But what you hear is not those waves, because the whole ocean in front of you is writhing and surging. And so you hear this, it sounds like the ocean has become a beast. Mm-hmm. And it's louder than what the waves are doing, even though the waves are like really wickedly, frighteningly big. But the ocean sound is bigger. And so there's this peculiar disconnect. And when you can't see, it's kind of like when you get seasick, it's your equilibrium and your eyes aren't lining up.
Yeah.
And so your body thinks you've been poisoned and wants you to vomit. So it's for lack of a better word. And so it's kind of like that. You're looking at these waves, but what you hear is not the waves, and you feel very unnerved,
discombobulated.
Discombobulated in a big
I was saving that word for this podcast.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Boy, you blew that one out in the first episode. You're gonna have to get creative. So this is the sound of a typhoon at work, right in a harbor where we were pulling boats out. So that distant roar is just ominous, just massive. That's a lifeguard tower telling me that I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time and it's too dangerous to be there. And that's my assistant telling me the translation, because you can get one rogue wave that comes in and gets a hold of you. Water is so powerful. Yeah. I mean, 1 foot of water can do a lot. As we complete every episode with a song from the new binaural album Full Circle, produced in Full Circle Sound, we'd like to end this one with Breath. You've been listening to part 1 of 2 episodes. Be sure to catch part 2, the conclusion of How to Boil a Microphone. We'd like to thank the government of Yukon for sponsoring in part this program, and look forward to seeing you soon in the Binaural Cafe. I'm Matthew Lien.